So, I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to spiral over thoughts in my own head. I've always considered myself fairly level-headed, but something changed over the past few months. It started with small things, losing my patience over minor stuff, snapping at people I cared about, and just feeling off. I chalked it up to stress at work, deadlines, the usual adulting nonsense. Then one evening, I stumbled across something that hit me like a truck. I was scrolling through my phone, looking for a photo from a trip my wife and I took last summer. Instead, I found a series of messages she had deleted from an app one didn't even know she used. I didn't mean to see them, but my thumb betrayed me. They were conversations with someone I barely knew, and the tone was weirdly intimate. Not necessarily romantic, but it made my stomach turn. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was overthinking. I kept scrolling, reading little snippets, and the more I read, the more I felt this creeping anxiety I couldn't shake. My mind started looping through every possible scenario. What if it was emotional cheating? What if she had been hiding things from me for years? It was a spiral, and I realized just how much my own negative thoughts were feeding the panic. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept running in circles, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely powerless over my own feelings. I didn't know how to stop the negative thoughts from devouring me. The next morning, I couldn't hide it. I had bags under my eyes, my coffee tasted like regret, and I kept staring at my phone like it held the answers to life itself. Finally, I decided I couldn't pretend anymore. I had to confront her. I asked her to sit down in the living room, and she immediately looked guilty, which, honestly, made my heart drop. I tried to keep my voice calm, but it cracked a little. I saw the messages, I said, and she flinched. There was that pause. Long enough for me to think she was going to break, to explain everything, but she didn't. Instead, she went quiet, then stammered something about just talking to a friend who understands me, about needing emotional support, and how I shouldn't be so paranoid. My brain was doing somersaults. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but the knot in my chest wasn't going away. Then, out of nowhere, she started crying and admitted something I never expected. She had been feeling neglected, lonely, and overwhelmed, and texting that person was her way of coping. She swore it wasn't cheating, that she still loved me, but the trust one had in her felt like it had evaporated overnight. I realized, sitting there watching her cry, that my own thoughts were spiraling faster than reality. Part of me wanted to yell, part of me wanted to comfort her, and part of me wanted to run out the door. Negative thoughts were like little gremlins in my head, whispering worst-case scenarios over and over, and I could feel them tugging me toward despair. Just when I thought things couldn't get more surreal, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the same app where I'd found the messages, another message from her friend. Only this time, it wasn't for her. It was a direct message to me. Confused and cautious, I opened it. The message read something like, "Hey, just want you to know the messages aren't what you think. She's stressed and overwhelmed, but she's not lying to you." My head spun. How did this person even have my number? Why were they reaching out like this? I confronted her again, this time more aggressively, and she broke down completely. She admitted she had involved this person because she didn't trust me to handle her stress, that she thought I'd dismiss her feelings. It sounded insane, like a soap opera, but at the same time, it explained a lot. She had been suffocating under the weight of her own emotions and mine, and both of us were spiraling in ways we didn't even realize. That day, I realized something crucial. The negative thoughts that had been eating at me weren't just about her. They were about me, my insecurities, my inability to trust, and my habit of catastrophizing every little thing. The messages, the secrecy, the confusion, it had all triggered a chain reaction in my mind. I didn't know how to stop the spiral yet, but that moment was like a spark. It was the first time I could see clearly that my own head was as much the problem as any external circumstance. After that chaotic day, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let my mind hijack my life every time something confusing or stressful happened. So I started small. I tried writing down every negative thought that popped into my head. Literally everything. She's lying. I can't trust anyone. I'm going to lose everything. At first, it felt exhausting. My notebook was filling up fast, and reading the thoughts back made me feel even worse. But then I tried something different. For every negative thought, I forced myself to write a neutral or positive counterthought. For example, when I wrote, "She's lying," I countered with, "Maybe she's just overwhelmed and doesn't know how to communicate properly." It didn't fix everything immediately, but over the next few days, I noticed tiny shifts. I could catch myself before spiraling completely. I started taking deep breaths when anxiety crept in, and I reminded myself that thoughts aren't facts. They're just thoughts. The unexpected part? One morning, after a particularly restless night, I found myself laughing at something dumb she said while we were making breakfast. For the first time in weeks, I felt a real sense of relief. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was proof that I could influence my own mind, and that was huge. Just as I started feeling a little control over my thoughts, life threw me a curveball. I was at work, trying to focus, when I got a text from her. She needed to talk. Panic hit me instantly. My first thought was, here we go again. She's hiding something. It's going to spiral. I'll never get a break. When I got home, she told me she had a sudden opportunity to travel for work, something that could really help her career but would take her away for a month. Normally, I'd have been thrilled for her. Instead, my mind exploded with anxiety. She'll meet someone else. She'll realize she's happier without me. She's going to leave. I felt the familiar storm of negative thoughts threatening to drown me. But then I remembered the exercises I'd started, the journaling, the counter thoughts, the deep breaths. I paused, took a long breath, and wrote down every fear. Then I wrote down the opposite. She loves me. We trust each other. A month apart doesn't define us. To my own surprise, it worked. The panic didn't vanish completely, but it slowed enough for me to have a real conversation with her. We talked through her plans, my fears, and how we'd stay connected. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't a hostage to my own thoughts. That day, I realized that negative thinking isn't just about what's happening around you. It's about the way you react internally. And while I wasn't perfect at it yet, I had discovered that I could fight back. Just when I thought I was getting the hang of this, life decided to remind me it doesn't care about self-help journals. A week later, I came home early from work because I felt uneasy, a nagging feeling I didn't fully trust. And there it was, her laptop open on the kitchen counter, notifications popping up from the same app. My first instinct was panic, pure and simple. My mind screamed, "I told you this would happen. She's lying. You're losing everything." My stomach twisted, my hands shook, and for a moment, I felt that old spiral creeping back. But then I paused. I took a deep breath, the same one I'd been practicing for weeks, and reminded myself, thoughts aren't facts. I opened the messages, and, shockingly, it wasn't what I feared. It was her friend checking in on her mental health, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed, just like before. No lies, no hidden feelings, just concern. The relief hit me so hard it was almost dizzying. I laughed out loud, which startled her when she walked in. She gave me a weird look, and I realized the same situation could have destroyed me a month ago, but now I could see it clearly. It was a harsh reminder that negative thoughts are tricky. They make you see threats that aren't there. But it also proved that I was learning how to stop letting them control me. After that heart-stopping moment with the laptop, I realized I needed a more structured approach. Journaling and deep breaths were great, but I needed something that would stick even when life threw curveballs. So I started setting aside 30 minutes every evening. No distractions, no phone, just me, a notebook, and my thoughts. I divided my journal into 3 sections. What happened today, negative thoughts I had, and evidence for and against those thoughts. It felt weird at first, like I was overanalyzing myself, but slowly, patterns emerged. I noticed how certain triggers, like her work stress or my own insecurities, would send me into a downward spiral. And more importantly, I could catch it earlier, before it got out of control. Then, out of nowhere, something completely unexpected happened. My younger brother called me, panicked. He had just gotten dumped and was spiraling with anxiety. He was calling me at midnight, crying, saying he couldn't stop thinking about everything wrong in his life. And in that moment, I realized I could actually apply what I was learning, not just for myself. I walked him through writing down his thoughts, finding counterpoints, and taking deep breaths. He was skeptical at first, but by the end of the call, he sounded calmer. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving my own mind. I was helping someone else survive theirs too. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I realized that stopping negative thoughts isn't about ignoring reality. It's about facing it, naming it, and giving it less power over you. Just when I thought I was making real progress, life hit me with a personal curveball I hadn't anticipated. I got a call from my boss. A major project I'd been leading for months had fallen apart because of a miscommunication between departments. Nothing I could do would fix it, and a big client was furious. Instantly, my mind went into overdrive. You're incompetent. You'll never succeed. This is proof you're failing at everything. I could feel the familiar tightness in my chest, the racing thoughts, the pull toward hopelessness. It was like I had been back at square one overnight. But this time, something was different. I paused. I sat on the edge of my bed, took the deep breaths I'd been practicing, and forced myself to write it all down. I wrote every negative thought that was pounding in my head. Then I wrote counter-evidence. The project was doomed from the start because of circumstances beyond my control. I had done everything I could. I had won small victories along the way. One failure didn't erase months of hard work. After that, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. I wasn't instantly calm, but the spiral had slowed. I realized that setbacks don't have to trigger full-blown panic. I could acknowledge the situation, face the emotions, and still regain control of my mind. That night, I called my wife and just talked about the stress and the fear of failing. We didn't fix everything, but just sharing it without judgment made the weight feel lighter. It was another reminder that managing negative thoughts isn't a solo journey. You need allies. A few days after the work disaster, something completely random happened that shook me in a good way. I was at a coffee shop, scribbling in my journal like I had become some kind of self-help monk, when a stranger at the next table started talking to me. She was an older woman, probably in her 60s, and she noticed my notebook. She asked what I was writing, and before I knew it, I was explaining my struggle with negative thoughts and how I'd been learning to manage them. I expected a polite nod and silence, but instead, she leaned in and said something I'll never forget. You're treating the symptoms, but not the root. Negative thoughts aren't the enemy, they're messengers. Listen to them, don't fight them. Figure out what they're trying to tell you about your fears, and then make a choice to act differently. Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. Up until that moment, I had been trying to shove my negative thoughts away, fight them off, or counter them with logic. But she made me realize they were trying to teach me something about myself, my insecurities, my triggers, my need for connection and reassurance. I left the coffee shop that day with a new perspective. Negative thoughts weren't monsters, they were signals. Signals that I could choose to listen to and respond to thoughtfully, instead of letting them dictate my mood or my relationship. A few days later, I got another chance to put the messenger idea into practice. My wife came home, visibly upset, and I could feel the familiar panic start to creep in. What now? Is this about me? Did I do something wrong? Instead of letting my mind spiral, I paused and asked myself, what is this trying to tell me? I realized my automatic negative thought was that I had failed her somehow. But maybe the real message was about her stress, not my inadequacy. I sat down with her and just listened. No judgment, no jumping to conclusions, just listening. She poured out a mix of frustration from work, exhaustion from daily life, and fears about her own choices. At first, I felt that old fear trying to sneak in. She's going to leave you. She's going to resent you forever. But I caught it, acknowledged it, and shifted my focus back to understanding her perspective. By the end of the conversation, the tension had melted. We weren't magically problem-free, but we had reconnected in a way that felt real. And I realized something surprising. The negative thoughts had been there the whole time, but by listening instead of fighting, I could turn them into a tool for empathy rather than a weapon against myself. It was a breakthrough moment. I felt lighter, more present, and strangely proud. I didn't need to control every thought. I just needed to respond to them consciously. Just when I thought I had a solid grip on things, an old doubt resurfaced. I was cleaning out some boxes in the attic and found a stack of old letters and gifts from a previous argument my wife and I had months ago, things I'd intentionally put aside to move on. At first, my mind wanted to do the usual spiral. See? You've been right to worry. She still has these, so maybe she hasn't changed. Maybe you're not enough. I felt that familiar sinking pit in my stomach. But this time I stopped. I wrote down each negative thought, then asked myself, is this fact, or is this my interpretation? Most of them were just interpretations, fueled by fear, not reality. The letters weren't threats. They were reminders of past mistakes, not present betrayals. I then took an extra step. I consciously chose to respond differently. Instead of letting the anxiety consume me, I used it as a reminder of how far we'd come. I put the letters back neatly, feeling a small but meaningful sense of closure. That day, I realized that negative thoughts will always linger. They're part of being human. The goal isn't to erase them. It's to catch them, analyze them, and choose how to act in response. That's the power I hadn't realized I had until now. Life decided to throw me another curveball, and this one hit out of nowhere. My wife got into a minor accident. Nothing serious, just a fender bender, but it triggered a wave of anxiety I hadn't expected. My first thoughts were instant panic. What if she's hurt? What if this spirals into something worse? Usually, I would have let my thoughts run wild for hours, imagining catastrophic outcomes. But this time I paused. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, negative thoughts are messengers, not reality. I checked in with her calmly, assessed the situation, and realized she was fine, just shaken. Here's the unexpected part. The accident became a turning point. Instead of letting fear dominate, I focused on support, helping her handle the insurance, calming her nerves, and making sure we stayed grounded. My own anxious thoughts were still there, but they didn't control me. By the end of the day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, empowered. I realized I had learned to face negative thoughts without letting them dictate my actions. I could acknowledge fear, analyze it, and choose a constructive response. It wasn't perfect, and I still had moments of doubt, but that day showed me that real growth isn't about eliminating fear. It's about learning to respond to it in a way that doesn't harm you or your relationships. A week after the accident, something unexpected happened that made all of this hit home. I was at the park, sitting on a bench, just observing people and trying to clear my mind. Normally, my brain would have wandered straight into a spiral. What if I fail again? What if something goes wrong? But this time I paused. I noticed a little boy struggling to fly a kite. He kept getting frustrated, but he didn't give up. I watched him, and for the first time, it hit me. My negative thoughts are like that kite. They tug and pull, sometimes making me feel out of control, but I can choose to guide them, instead of letting them drag me down. I pulled out my journal and wrote, I am learning. I am not my thoughts. I can respond with clarity, not panic. It felt liberating. I realized that managing negative thoughts isn't a one-time fix. It's a practice, a mindset, and a daily choice. That afternoon, I felt lighter, calmer, and more confident in my ability to navigate both life and my relationship. The fear hadn't disappeared, but it no longer had power over me. I finally understood that the unexpected events in life aren't there to break us. They're there to teach us resilience, patience, and perspective. After weeks of small victories, setbacks, and surprises, I finally took a step back and looked at the bigger picture. The negative thoughts that used to control me were still there, but they didn't scare me anymore. I had learned to pause, analyze, and respond rather than react. My relationship with my wife had changed too. We weren't perfect, and we still had arguments, but now we communicated with more honesty and patience. I realized that trust isn't just about what the other person does. It's about how I manage my own fears and insecurities. My ability to control my negative thoughts directly impacted how I could love and support her. I also noticed the ripple effect outside of our relationship. I was calmer at work, more patient with friends, and even better at helping my brother and others when they were struggling. It was like learning to navigate my own mind had given me tools to navigate life more effectively. The biggest lesson? Negative thoughts aren't enemies. They're signals. Listen to them, understand them, and choose how to act. Don't let fear dictate your life. but don't ignore it either. Looking back, I can honestly say that this whole experience changed me. I went from being someone who was trapped by his own thoughts to someone who can notice, analyze, and respond to them. It didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't perfect, but it's real progress. The unexpected events, the messages, the work setbacks, the accident, even the random encounter with the stranger at the coffee shop, taught me that life will always throw challenges at you. What matters is how you handle the storm inside your head. If I could give advice to anyone struggling with negative thoughts, acknowledge them, don't push them away. Write them down, name them, understand what they're trying to tell you. Pause before reacting. A deep breath, a journal entry, or a moment of reflection can stop the spiral. Counter with evidence, not denial. Challenge your thoughts with facts, not empty positivity. Listen to your mind, but don't obey it blindly. Negative thoughts are signals, not commands. Use support systems. Talk to loved ones, mentors, or even strangers who offer perspective. Most importantly, remember that controlling negative thoughts isn't about never feeling them. It's about choosing not to let them control you. And if I can do it, after months of panic, spirals, and unexpected shocks, anyone can. Life is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes terrifying, but it's also manageable when you learn how to navigate your own mind.